The story is by Parker Fillmore. Mighty Miko, a story about a poor woodsman and a grateful fox. So now let's begin. Once there was an old woodsman and his wife who had an only son named Miko. As the mother lay dying, the young man wept bitterly. "When you are gone, my dear mother," he said, "there will be no one left to think of me." The poor woman comforted him as best she could do and said to him, "You will still have your father." Shortly after the woman's death, the old man too was taken ill. "Now indeed I shall be left desolate and alone," Miko thought. As he sat beside his father's bedside, he saw him grow weaker and weaker. "My boy," the old man said just before he died, "I have nothing to leave you but the 3 snares with which these many years I have caught wild animals. Those snares now belong to you. When I am dead, go into the woods, and if you find a wild creature caught in any of them, free it gently and bring it home alive." After the father's death, Miko remembered the 3 snares and went out to the woods to see them. The first was empty and also the second, but in the third he found a little red fox. He carefully lifted up the spring that had shut down on one of the fox's feet and then carried the little creature home in his arms. He shared his supper with it and lay down to sleep when the fox curled up at his feet. They lived together some time until they became close friends. "Miko," the fox said one day, "why are you sad?" "Because I'm lonely." "Pooh," said the fox. "There's not a way for a young man to talk. You are out to get married. Then you won't feel lonely." "Married?" Miko repeated. "How can I get married? I can't marry a poor girl because I'm too poor myself, and a rich girl won't marry me." "Nonsense," the fox said. "You are fine, well set up young man, and you are kind and gentle. What more could a princess ask?" Miko laughed to think of a princess waiting him for a husband. "I mean what I say," the fox insisted. "Take our own princess now. What would you think of marrying her?" Miko laughed louder than before. "I've heard," he said, "that is the most beautiful princess in the world. Any man would be happy to marry her." "Very well," the fox said. "If you feel that way about her, then I'll arrange the wedding for you." When the little fox actually did trot off to the royal castle, the gain audience to with king. "My master sent you greetings," the fox said, "and he begged to loan him your bushel measure." "My bushel measure?" the king repeated in surprise. "Who is your master, and why does he must my bushel measure?" "Shh," the fox whispered, as though she didn't want the courtiers to hear what he was saying. He slipped up quite to the king and murmured in his ear, "Surely you have heard of Miko, haven't you? Mighty Miko, as he is called." The king had never heard of any Miko who was known as Mighty Miko, but thinking that perhaps he should have heard of him, he shook his head and murmured, Miko, Mighty Miko, oh, be so sure, yes, of course. My master is about to start off a journey and he needs a bushel measure for a very particular reason." I understand, the king," said the king, although he didn't understand at all. And he gave orders that the bushel measure which they used in the storeroom of the castle to be brought in and given to the fox. The fox carried off the measure and hid it in the woods. Then she scurried about all sort of little out of the way nooks and crannies, where the people had hidden their savings and dug up a gold piece here and a silver piece there, until he had a handful. Then he went back to the woods and stuck the various coins in the cracks of the measure. Then the next day he returned to the king. "My master, mighty Miko," he said, "send you thanks, O king, for the use of your bushel measure." The king held out his hands and gave the fox him the measure and peeped inside to see if by a chance it contained any trace of what had recently been measured. His eye, of course, at once caught the glint of gold and silver coins locked in the cracks. "Ah," he said, thinking me too must be a very mighty lord indeed to be so careless of his wealth. "I should like to meet your master. Won't you and he come to visit me?" This was what the fox wanted the king to say, but he pretended to hesitate. "Thank you, your majesty, for a kind invitation," he said, "but I fear my master can't accept it just now. He wants to get married soon, and we are about to start a long journey to inspect the number of foreign princesses." This made King all more anxious to Miko visit him at once, for he thought if that Miko should see her daughter before he saw those foreign princesses, he might fall in love with her and marry her. So he said to the fox, "My dear fellow, you must prevail on your master to make a visit before he starts out his travels. Will you? Won't you?" The fox looked at this way as that she was too embarrassed to speak. "Your majesty," he said at last, "I pray you pardon my frankness. The truth is you are not rich enough to entertain my master, and your castle isn't big to house the immense retinue that he always attend him." The king, who by this time was frantic to see Miko, lost his head completely. "My dear fox," he said, "I'll give you anything in the world if you prevail upon your master to visit me at once. Couldn't you suggest him to travel with a modest retinue this time?" The fox shook his head. "No, his rules is either to travel with a great retinue or to go on foot disguised as a poor woodsman, attended only by me." "Couldn't you prevail on him to come with me to disguise as a poor woodsman?" the king begged. "Once he was here, I could place George's clothes at his disposal." But still the fox shook his head. "I fear your majesty, wardrobe doesn't contain the kind of clothes my master is accustomed to do. I assure you, I will got some very good clothes," the king said. "Come along this minute and we'll go through them, and I'm sure you'll find some that your master would wear." So they went to a room which was like big a wardrobe, with hundreds of hooks, upon which were hung hundreds of coats and breeches and embroidered shirts. The king ordered his attendants to bring the costumes down one by one and place them before the fox. They began with the plain clothes. "Good enough for most people," the fox said, "but not for my master." Then they took down Germans of a finer grade. "I'm afraid you are going all this trouble for nothing," the fox said. "Frankly now, don't you realize that my master could possibly put any of these things?" Now the king, who had hoped to keep for his own use the most gorgeous clothes of all, ordered these to be shown. The fox looked them sideways, sniffed uncertainly, and at last said, Well, perhaps my master would consent to wear these for few days. They are not what he accustomed to wear, but I will say this for him. He is not proud. The king was overjoyed. Well, my dear fox, I will suggest I'll have the guest chambers put in readiness for you, master, to visit me and have all these, my finest clothes, laid out for him. You won't disappoint me, will you? I'll do my best, the fox promised. With that, he bade the king a civil good day and ran home back to Meeko. The next day, as the princess was peeping out of an upper window of the castle, she saw a young woodsman approaching, accompanied by a fox. He was a fine, stalwart youth, and the princess, who knew from the presence of the fox that he must be Meeko, gave a long sigh and confided to her serving maid, "I think I could fall in love with the young man if he really were only a woodsman." Later, when she saw him arranged in her father's finest clothes, when she looked so well on Meeko that no one ever recognized them as the king's, she lost her heart completely. When Meeko was presented to her, she blushed and trembled just as an ordinary girl might before the handsome young man. All the court was equally delighted with Meeko. The ladies were into ecstasies over his modest manners, his fine figure, and the gorgeousness of his clothes. And then the old greybeard councillors, nodding their head in approval, said to each other, "Nothing of the coxcomb about this young fellow. He, in spite of the great wealth, to see how politely he listens to us when he talks." The next day, the fox went privately to the king. "My master is a man of few words and quick judgment. He bids me to tell you that your daughter, the princess, pleases him mightily, and that, with your approval, he will make his address to her at once." The king was greatly agitated and began, "My dear fox," but the fox interrupted him to say, "I think the matter over carefully and give me your decision tomorrow." The king counseled with the princess and with his counselors, and in a short time the marriage was arranged and the wedding ceremony actually performed. "Didn't I tell you?" the fox said, when he and Meeko were alone after the wedding. "Yes," Meeko acknowledged. "You did promise that I should marry the princess, but tell me, now I am married, what I am to do? I can't live on here forever my life." "Put your mind at rest," the fox said. "I've thought of everything. Just do as I tell you. You will have nothing to regret. Tonight, say to the king, it is now fitting that you should visit me and see yourself a sort of castle which was over your daughter's. It's her here for to be mistress." When Meeko said this to the king was overjoyed. Now that the marriage was actually taken place, he was wondering whether he hadn't perhaps been a little hasty. Meeko's words reassured him as he eagerly accepted the invitation. On the morrow, the fox said to Meeko, "Now I'll run on ahead and get things ready for you." "But where are you going?" said Meeko, frightened at the thought of being deserted by his little friend. The fox drew Meeko aside and whispered softly, "A few days' march from here is a very gorgeous castle belonging to a wicked old dragon whose nose is warm. I think Worm's castle would just about suit you." No, it's good. Miko agreed. But how we are going to take away from the worm? Trust me, the fox said. All you need to do is lead the king and his courtiers along the main highway until the noon tomorrow. You reach the crossroads. Turn there to the left and go straight until you see the Tower of Worm Castle. If you met any men with a sideways shepherd or like, ask them whose men they are, and they are sure whose men they are, and show no surprise at their answer. So now, dear master, farewell until we meet again at your beautiful castle. The fox trotted off at a smart pace, and Miko and the princess and the king, attended by the whole court, followed them leisurely fashion. The little fox, when he had left the main highway at the crossroad, soon met 10 woodsmen with their axes over their shoulders. They were all dressed in the blue smokes of the same cut. Good day, the fox said politely. Whose men are you? Our master is known as Worm, the woodsman told him. Oh, my poor lads, the fox said, shaking his head sadly. What's the matter? The poor woodsman asked. For a few moments, the fox pretended to be overcome with the emotions to speak. Then he said, My poor lads, don't you know the king is coming with a great force to destroy the worm and all his people? The woodsmen were simple fellows, and their news threw them into great consternation. Is there no way just to speak? They said. The fox put his palm to his head and thought. Well, he said at last, there is one way you might escape by everyone who asks you that you are mighty Miko's man. But if you value your lives, never say again that his master is warm. We are mighty Miko's man. The woodsman at once began repeating over and over. We are mighty Miko's man. A little further on the road, the fox met 20 grooms, dressed in the same blue smokes, which were tending hundreds of beautiful horses. The fox talked to the 20 grooms as they talked to the woodsman, and before they left, two were shouting, We are mighty Miko's man! The fox came to a huge flock of 1,000 sheep tended by 30 shepherds, all dressed in the worm's blue smokes. He stopped and talked to them until he had them roaring out, We are mighty Miko's man! Then the fox trotted on until he reached the castle of the worm. He found the worm himself inside, lolling lazily about. He had a huge dragon, and he had been a great warrior in his day. In fact, his castle and his lands and his servant and his potions had all been won in battle. But now for many years no one has cared to fight him, and he had grown fat and lazy. Good day, said the fox, pretending to be very breathless and frightened. You are the one, aren't you? Yes, said the dragon boastfully. I am the great worm. The fox pretended to go much agitated. My dear, my poor fellow, I'm sorry for you. But of course, none of us can expect to live forever. Well, I must hurry along. I think I would stop and just say you goodbye. Made uneasy by the fox's words, the worm cried out, Just wait a minute, what's the matter? The fox was already at the door, but the worm entirely he paused and over his shoulder. Why, my poor fellow, you are surely know, don't you, that the king is with a great force is coming to destroy you and all you poor people. What? The worm gasped, turning sickly green with fright, and he knew he was fat and helpless, and he could never fight again as the years gone by. Don't you go just yet, he begged the fox. When is the king coming? He's on the highway now, and just while I'm going, goodbye. My dear fox, just stay a moment, I'll reward you richly. Help me to hide so that call the king would find me. What about the shelf where the linen is stored? I could crawl under the linen, and if you lock the door out from outside, the king would never find me. Very well, the fox agreed, but we must hurry. So they ran outside to the shed where the linen was kept, and the worm hid himself under the linen. The fox locked the door and set fire to the shed. There soon was nothing left of that old wicked old dragon, the worm, but a handful of ashes. The fox now called together the dragon's household and talked to them over the Mikos and had the woodsman and the grooms and the shepherds. Meanwhile, the king and his party were slowly covering the ground over which the fox had speed so quickly. When they come to the 10 woodsmen in blue smokes, the king said, I wonder whose woodsmen those are. One of the attendants asked the woodsman, and the 10 of them shouted in the top of voices, We are mighty Miko's men! Miko said nothing, and the king and the court were impressed and knew with his modesty. A little further on, they met 20 grooms on with their hundreds pressing horses. When the grooms were questioned, they are answered with a shout, We are mighty Miko's men! The fox certainly spoke the truth. The king thought to himself when he told about the Miko's riches. A little later, the 30 shepherds, when they were questioned, made an answer with a chorus that was deafening to hear. We are mighty Miko's men! The sight of the 1,000 sheep that belonged to his son-in-law made the king feel poor, humble, in comparison, and the courtier whispered among themselves, For all a simple manner, mighty Miko must be a richer, more powerful lord than the king himself. In fact, he is only a very great lord indeed who could be so simple. At last they reached the castle, which was from the blue smoked soldier that guarded the gateway. They knew to be Miko's. The fox came out to welcome the king, and behind him 2 rows of household servants. These, at the signal of the fox, cried out in one voice, We are mighty Miko's man! We are mighty Miko's man! Then Miko, in the same simple manner that he would have used as his father's little hut in the woods, bade the king and his followers welcome, and they all entered the castle, where they found a great feast already prepared and waiting. The king stayed on for several days, and then the more saw the Mikos, the better pleased that he had got him for a son-in-law. When he was leaving, he said to Miko, Your castle is so much grander than mine, and that I hesitate ever asking you back for a visit. But Miko reassured the king by saying earnestly, My dear father-in-law, when I first entered your castle, I thought it was the most beautiful castle in the world. The king was flattered, and the courtier whispered among themselves, How affable him to say that he knows very well how much grander his own castle is. When the king and his followers were safely gone, the little red fox came to Miko and said, Now, my master, you have no reason to feast lonely. You are lord of the most beautiful castle in the world, and you have for a sweet wife a lovely little princess. Now you have no longer any need of me, so I am going to bid you farewell. Miko thanked the little fox all over he had done, and the little fox trotted off the words. Now you see the poor old father, although he has no wealth to leave to his son, he was the really cause of the Miko's good fortune. He told to Miko in the first place to carry home alive anything he might find caught in the snares. Bye.